Hello.
Hi.
Hi there, everybody.
Hello.
Hello, Jochen. Welcome. And schools.
Thank you.
Can you all hear us? Can you see us? How are we going out there? Can I get a thumbs up from schools if they can hear and see us? Big thumbs up.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Hi.
All right.
Hello.
Graham Boyton, welcome. Finley High School. We've got some people arriving.
Look, there's someone.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yep. More thumbs up.
So we've got 3 schools patched in.
Yeah, that's a good start.
If you're waiting to be
Wait,
patched in,
does that mean you can hear us?
excellent. If you're waiting to be patched in, please turn on your
Yeah.
videos and your microphones.
Oh, look. There they are.
Excellent. Great.
Okay.
How many have we got so far? How are we doing for time? All right. Cool, fantastic. Welcome everybody to our Shape video conference. We're here at the Museum of Applied Arts and Sciences. Today we'll be discussing the work of Jochen Heinzmann. This talk coincides with the Sydney Design Festival and also the Shape 2018 exhibition that we host here at the museum. Museum of Applied Arts and Sciences acknowledges Australia's First Nations peoples as the custodians of the land and extends respect to elders past and present, and through them to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Today we're joined in the studio by Campbell Bickerstaff. He's a curator here at the museum, and we've also got Mark Stewart on my right. Alex Stewart, apologies. Alex Stewart is an HSC marker. So a bunch of people who are very interesting to talk to, and you should be listening up. We're also joined via video conference with Jochen Heinzmann. Hello, Jochen.
Hi, Jochen.
Hello.
Hey there. We will be discussing today, we're talking about design, we're talking about digital fabrication, design and technology, industrial technology and all associated disciplines. Throughout the discussion, we're going to throw some questions out to you, our audience. So if you have any questions throughout the discussion, please jot them down and we'll throw over to you guys midway through the discussion to ask questions of anybody here on the panel. My name is Riley. I'm an educator here at the museum. I also work part-time at a makerspace, and I'll be emceeing the discussion. For those people who aren't familiar with Jochen's work, he is a Canberra-based woodworker. He's a furniture maker. His work shows really special and close attention to detail and appreciation for quality materials, more commonly associated with traditional disciplines of carpentry, woodworking, joinery, and cabinet making. He also combines these traditional techniques with technology-driven design and digital fabrication to produce works that are functional and beautiful. Jochen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in woodwork, please?
Sure. Thanks, Riley. My background in woodwork goes really way back to my childhood. My grandfather and later my uncle had a joinery that my father and I would regularly go to actually make furniture. So my childhood room was actually filled with furniture that I had made myself, or with my father anyway, at this joinery. I then took a little bit of a detour and I got into engineering and worked in that domain for probably 20 years. And at some point decided that I would really like to come back to furniture making and also bring some of the things that I had learned in the engineering disciplines with me into that space. So for the last 5 or 6 years, I've basically been making furniture and developing some new ideas around how, on a small scale, furniture can be made.
Fantastic. So that's quite an unconventional beginnings as a designer and as a manufacturer. And we're going to talk today how you combine that tradition with the modern applications that you maybe bring from engineering that I think makes your work unique. Yeah. So we're joined today, we've got Campbell on my left over here. Campbell, you were one of the people that brought Jochen's work to the attention of the museum. What was it that drew you to his work initially?
Okay, look, can I run over there and talk about the furniture? Because
So we'll go across now to another section of our,
thanks, Riley.
our museum.
Okay, can everyone see over here? Because if like, Riley's just asked me to have a chat about what brought the museum's attention to this. Well, it was me. I went into a shop in Canberra and this was sitting there and I ran over to it because I just wanted to hold it. And then I did some research and found out who the maker was, and then I became very interested in the process about how the form was created. So this in particular, this is by Jochen. This is called the Spark Stool, right? It's Jochen's designed it. He's worked out how to, he's done it on a piece of paper. He's worked out how to manufacture it. He's done his CAD, and he's got CNC machines. So it gets machined out and then assembled and hand finished. What I really like about it, I suppose, is the fact that you don't see any of the machine marks left on this piece of furniture. So it gets, you got the legs, you got the seat, and they go through the code, sends it to the CNC machine, cuts it out, Jochen assembles it, and then he hand finishes it. So I like the fact that erases all the machine marks. It's also, look, the stools are really, it's an ancient piece of furniture. It's like the simplest piece of furniture. It's, what is it? It's 3 legs, right? 3. And so, but Jochen's tackled it in a really interesting way. And I got in touch with Jochen. We got a set of material from Jochen which unpack the way the chair is machined, but there's still mystery in there for me. I still, as we can see here, see something like this is the blanket of the seat, and there's, you can see the first stage of milling, the next stage gets a finer machining. But I suppose, there's still, for people who are interested in this type of furniture and want to get into small scale manufacturing, that was the other thing that Riley mentioned. It's this blossoming of small scale manufacturing, and Jochen's using the tools that allows him to manufacture his own designs. And we've got we've just seen the beginnings of this, and so that, and it's also, I suppose, I think it's inspiring for year 11 and 12 students to see someone who has realised their own design and under their own steam and capacity. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Good, let's go back.
Yeah, just to put things in context, because Campbell's a curator here at the museum, he does, part of his job is to decide what objects are significant. And so the Spark Stool is going to rest in the museum alongside works by people like Lucian Henry, an early colonial Australian designer, as well as modern designers like Eames and his chairs. So really quite prestigious company that these Spark Stools are going to be holding. And I like what you said, it's not just the finished product that's significant and beautiful, but the way that it encapsulates the processes of manufacturing it that are combine those traditional techniques with those technology-driven techniques as well.
So I suppose I'm really interested in Alex and what he thinks about, say, something like this coming from someone who's judging material that's being done by current year 12 students, and we're on the right path here. What can we do with material like this?
Well, I wanted to jump in when you're talking about a bespoke bit of furniture that's a one-off, because for those of you in school land, and I'm pointing to your screen there, those of you that are doing your major project, it's your own piece of furniture, it's your own product that you need to make and manufacture yourselves. Some of the techniques and processes that Jochen uses, you might want to use yourself. And with industrial technology, especially even designer technology, you need to complete your project and have it finished. So sometimes you might decide that you're going to CNC a whole range of things and you're having lots and lots of problems, and it's getting towards the end of June and your projects are due in August. You might need to change the way that you decide to finish your project and build it. And I think it'd be good to hear from Jochen at some point about how he goes from the CNC finish on the seat base through to the nicely hand finished base that you sit on with your bum.
Yeah, I agree.
Sure.
I think hearing from Jochen also about that, you know, going from the drawing and the concept to the CAD, and then going, well, how does this end up ending up as code and going to the machine as well? So
Yeah.
a couple of questions for Jochen. Do you want to
Well,
tackle them?
well, yeah, maybe
Sure.
we should cross over to Jochen now to talk about the processes that go into making some of your furniture. Do you want to give us a quick tour of your workshop and show us some of the machines that you use? And
Yeah, sure, if you like.
that'd be
I'm
fantastic.
on the phone, so I can take you around the workshop for a sec. Let me just turn this around. Okay, so this is my main workbench where I pretty much assemble and finish most of my work, except if it's too large and it doesn't fit on there. In that case, I use one of the assembly benches that are here in the background. We have some work on at the moment. Other things that are happening in the shop at the moment, I started doing some steam bending here. So this is a steam bending mold with some walnut inside that I'm still waiting for the glue to dry.
So
Then we got, well, almost dropped my phone. Then we got, this is my CNC machine. It's what's called a half-size machine, so it's 1.2 by 1.2 meter work envelope. And we got some wood storage here. This over here is the main machining area with a table saw, planer, bandsaw, and some other smaller machines that are typically, you know, used for you know, the preparation of the timber. Here's a little bit of storage area. You can see there's actually a whole bunch of parts of spark stools that are sitting here that I haven't quite assembled yet. There's a lot of legs here that are still waiting to be put together. And yeah, that's pretty much the smaller machines here, router table, sanding machinery, drilling machinery. And over in this corner, this is really my photography corner here. I've got some lights and some white background, and this is a table project that's in the making at the moment.
So something there that's really good to see is pretty much all the equipment and machinery that you're using. A lot of schools will have access to. Most schools wouldn't have a CNC router quite the size that what you've got, but it'd be nice if you did. But all the equipment you've got, a lot of schools have the majority of that, if not all of it. So for our students out there, the sorts of things that Jochen's producing, there's no reason why you can't.
So Jochen, any advice for students who maybe don't have access to that same level of machinery, a CNC machine? What are some similarities between a CNC machine and maybe more conventional workshop machinery like a lathe or a table router or something like that?
Well, if you don't have a CNC machine, then basically a lot of the more organic shapes you will have to produce either by hand or with a molder, which I guess is the other sort of commonly used machine to create, you know, non-linear shapes in wood. Both of those things are possible. They're just not as flexible and not as quite as automatic, I suppose, as using a CNC router. But you know, all those things can, in principle, be made with hand tools.
You had you were steam bending.
That's correct. Yes.
A piece of timber there.
Yes.
So where you've got, is that a machine that's just off the shelf turnkey solution, or have you?
Oh no.
You've built that.
No. Yeah, that sort of thing you can't really actually buy. So I actually bought myself a small steam generator that is really actually meant for a sauna, I think. But it makes a lot of steam, so that's good.
Yeah.
And I just piped that through a pipe that has the timber inside it.
Yep.
and that makes the timber soft, and you can start bending it slowly without it cracking.
Oh, look, we're looking on screen at the
and-
moment. We've got a picture of you with. Oh, could you just go back? So we're on the other side of the screen to Jochen. We're seeing some parts. So there's the
CNC.
the CNC and the bits and the stages. Can you just talk
Yes,
about?
so-
You know,
Sure.
I imagine that a little stool like that in a machine would be whipped up really fast, but it's not. It's really quite. You know, you break down it into a manufacturable. You know, you take your drawing, you do it in your CAD. How do you work out to split it up into components, and then that your machine can cope with to then assemble the bits as you made them? You know, what goes through your mind when you know, what are the parameters for that?
Well, I sort of try not to think too much about the manufacturing process during the design phase, and I like to keep the design phase as clean as possible and independent of how the thing will ultimately be made.
Yeah.
But once the design is in place, you have to split this the design into physical parts that can actually be machined,
Yep.
and then you have to sort of break down the machining process in steps that your machine can actually perform. For example, both the legs and the seat of the stool, they're both they're shaped all around, so the machine can obviously only machine from one side. So if you want a shape that is actually 360-degree shaped, you at some point have to flip the piece around in the machine and actually machine the other side.
Yep.
So there's that part of breaking things up, but then you also have to think about how you actually hold all these parts in the machine while they're actually being machined. In particular, once they have been half machined and they're sort of round on one side already.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that is sorry, I'll just come in, Jochen, because that is really what challenges my head when I see that you do the top half of the stool, and then as you've said to me, you just cut off the big chunks because it's going to take the machine forever, and you have to refasten your piece, your blank, back into the CNC machine, but it has to be not just fastened, it has to be fastened in an exact location, doesn't it? On that bench.
Correct. It has to be registered in a particular place, so the two halves of the machining actually line up. You can imagine if you're like even a few millimeter offset, the entire shape would be ruined and really unusable.
Yeah.
So with parts that are machined, as I said, from all sides, you really have to think about how you actually go about machining the first half, so the part can still be held in a way that you can machine the other side. And some of this is a little bit of development. Sometimes you try one way and you find that that's actually not working as well as you thought, and then you try another way. But for example, with the seats, it's important that you machine the bottom first, and the mortises in those particular shapes that the tendons fit in, because that then allows you to attach the half machined seat back into the machine, and you're using the machined shapes of the mortises to actually register the part on the machine. So you need receptacles on the machine that actually that effectively tendons that fit into these mortises, and that allows you to register that part in an exact place.
I suppose the leg just come in again. I can see how you've done the base, but again, I suppose it's the leg that I'm going. Is it done upright? How is it machined? Because once you've done one side of it, there's really How does it sit on the CNC machine once for the next half?
Yeah. So the first stage, actually, if somebody is over on the display with all the legs, especially people who haven't seen that, it might actually help. So the first thing I machine onto the legs is that sort of star-shaped tenon, and that is machined from the long end, I suppose. So the leg has to go either vertically into the machine, or what I usually do is I mount the leg horizontally on the machine, but then I have to turn the spindle motor of the machine over by putting a right angle bracket on the machine, basically, so I can actually machine the tenon from the side, so that the milling tool can run around the tenon like that.
Right.
Now, once that side is machined, I then machine the other sides, and it doesn't for that part, I guess it doesn't really matter whether you do the top or the bottom first. I think it machines the top first, and when I do that, what I do is that part basically sits in a partial mold that registers both the shape of the remaining leg as well as the tenon in a particular place, and it's only clamped against the bottom and the top of I'm just trying to figure this out, of the leg. So the only clamping actually occurs right on the top, right there. Yeah, exactly like that. It's held like that in a mold, effectively. And the mold for the first part, obviously, is just sort of a V-shaped groove because the bottom is still raw. And then for the back side of the leg, the already machined front has to fit into a mold that is different. So all these machining processes need their very specific custom-made mold to hold these parts in place.
Do you have a question,
I've
Alex?
got a couple of questions.
Come on in. Come on in.
Hello.
Okay.
So we've got a square leg up the top here, and you've already got your tenon CNC'd.
Yep.
And then we move to a tapered leg. Just for all our students that are dialed in, how do you make those tapers? Do you CNC those, or do you use a more efficient method?
Yeah, that's just table sawed off.
You just
with the
table
slit
saw?
on the table saw.
Yep.
Yes.
So it's a balance of using traditional techniques as well as the CNC in order to make your stools. And is that to do a bit with appropriate processes as well as how long it would take you to do that, running a business?
Well, that's correct. So while the whole CNC process is great in many ways in terms of its ability to generate shapes and the fact that it runs automatic once everything is set up, it is not a very fast process. So to give you an idea how much machining is required for the parts that actually make up one stool, I have to sort of budget around 8 to 9 hours of just machining time on the CNC machine without any of the other machining that has to happen before in terms of planing, gluing, and preparing the timber. So that's a really long time, and I do remove as much of the waste as possible with table saws and band saws to speed the process up.
Good.
Yeah. So on the seat, for example, so on the leg, the sides get cut off on the table saw, and on the seat, after I machine the bottom, I cut the triangles that are sort of sitting on the sides, then I cut those off on the bandsaw, just to remove waste really quickly.
And
actually, I even actually drill holes into the middle where the mortise is being cut. I usually drill a 25 millimeter hole in that before I actually cut the shape of the tenon. And all of this is just to speed things up, because otherwise it would probably be, I don't know, double the amount of machining time.
And you need to balance up the time and the cost with production, of course.
Correct.
So one of my questions is, we've talked earlier for people at home the other week. You mentioned something particular about the tenons and mortises on these stools that you can do with a CNC that would be very difficult to do with a hand-cut mortise and tenon. True. And what was that you mentioned?
Yes. So the tenons and mortises, they have a very small draft angle of 0.5 degree. So the tenon is actually slightly thicker on the base than it is on the top. And this draft angle allows me to insert the leg into the seat, basically frictionless, until it's almost completely inserted, and only on the last maybe 10 millimeters you actually have the two surfaces make proper contact, and then the last few millimeters are just basically hammered in with a hammer to give the whole assembly some tension.
What are you after?
Oh, yeah, there was one.
So
had a look, yeah.
I'll ask another question. So down here,
Yeah.
this is like a contour map, a rough cut of your seat base. I don't know if we can kind of get that on the camera. Once you've done your final cut with the CNC, obviously the shape we end up with on the finished product is a lot smoother and a lot cleaner. What tools do you use to clean that up and finish it off?
Yeah. So what you see on the right side of the screen, that just disappeared actually. That was sort of that is not the final stage of the process. So this is the rough shape, and that's followed by another cut which removes those sort of topological map type structures, and you end up with a very fine ripple on the surface from the machining. And I used actually initially an angle grinder and a flap disc to remove all the machining marks. And they're actually quite easy to sand off, because as you machine them with the angle grinder, those lines start getting thinner and thinner. So even from the thickness of the line, you can actually see how much material you still have to remove. So I sand the entire surface, maybe not the edges though, but most of the surface flat with an angle grinder, and then that is followed by sanding with an orbital sander, 120 grit, 180, 240, 320. And the edges have to be hand sanded with any sort of tool that makes that has a flat sanding surface. You can't really get the right sort of shape on the edge of that seat. So for that to have this nice round edge that sort of just flows around, that has to be sanded by hand, just with paper.
And roughly, approximately how long would you spend sanding the seat base from start to finish as part of your finishing process?
So the sanding is probably around 4 hours for one stool. So that would take me from that from the glue up stage to a stage where I can start applying the first coat of oil.
So 4 hours for one school. If you're making a major project that's quite large, like a bar or a pool table or a dining table, that's going to be a lot more than 4 hours, I imagine, of sanding and finishing for people back in schools thinking about the major project.
Yes, I guess there would be a lot of sanding, so I guess you have to buckle up for that if you want to make a big project for a bar.
I suppose there's no way to avoid that. There's no kind of machine that's going to replace that part of the process, is there?
No, not really. That would be incredibly difficult to automate. That has to be done by hand to create this organic shape and to make sure all the marks are removed. That just requires the human eye and the human hand to achieve that.
Look, and Jochen, I must say that that is one part of this piece of furniture, of the Spark stool, that makes it pretty special. That it's not just something that's popped out of a machine. There is that level of hand finish, and that's what I suppose the museum recognised in the design as well. I'm feeling like I know some more about this now.
I just wanted to ask him, we talked about his design process at the start, but we ended up getting sidetracked.
Did we?
Yeah. Have you got your sketchbook with you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I do actually.
So one of the things for those of us doing the HSC is we need to show sort of the development of our ideas and the progress of them. And Jochem's got his sketchbook here, and you might be able to see this on the screen depending on how good his phone
that's
is.
great. That's there, the first page, and we can see the top left there, which is just the arch within, 2 arches within one other arch, and you can see how quickly Jochen goes from the concept to developing it as a piece of furniture. Do you want to flip the page, Jochen?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, the original idea was arches, small arches within a larger arch, and the initial idea was actually for a piece of furniture that was not quite as organic as the stool turned out in the end. So initially I was thinking of a lot more straight faces. So for example here, the top was still perfectly flat, even though I was sort of contemplating sort of some form of shaped legs. Lots of ideas here about, you know, what shape the tenon should actually be, because I did want something that was sort of self-locking mechanically, but you can see here it was still sort of a flat seat at that point in time. So a long way really still from what I ended up with. I then started sort of looking into shaping the seat. Initially I thought it would just be sort of an indentation that would be in the middle, which then sort of started to grow, and I ultimately started to look at something that was actually a completely organic shape here on the side. There was some more ideas around the shape of the tenon. There's a lot of those, especially this one here with the triangular or 3-lobed shape was something I had been considering quite seriously. And I guess this was sort of getting a lot closer to that is actually mostly the final picture, even though these only have 5, I ended up with 6 lobes on those tenons, but I ended up with a what is ultimately, I guess, was a completely organic shape.
And what we can do in schools is we can get those and make them into smaller sizes and put them on our design pages onto one page with some notes and annotations, and,
Sure.
and that'll help students show their marker what they've gone through in developing their project and how they've gone through it, so we get an idea about what you're trying to do, which is very, very helpful. And that was a really good illustration about a small project, how you can develop that along its way.
Yeah.
So Alex, you'd give that a band 6?
The sketches.
The project as a whole, with the sketches, the process, the finished product?
Well, that's a really good question to ask, and being a good person that marks, I'll say I'd have to read the full folio and see how the folio relates to the project, because the folio tells the story of the project, and if in your folio there's gaps in the information on how you've come across your final design, how you've made your project, and the problems you've had along the way and how you've solved those problems, if there's gaps, you would not get a band 6, because there'd be a lot of unknown things. The market doesn't know how you've made your project and all the issues you've had to complete, to overcome to complete your project. So if everything was in the folio, I'm not going to lock myself in on a mark, I'm sorry.
All right. But thanks for those tips on the sorts of things that students can do to make their work up to that sort of professional standard. And looking through the shape exhibition downstairs that we've got on at the moment, there are a lot of examples of some incredible student work, and a lot of it's woodwork, and it does look professional. Like the standard of that student work is at that professional manufacturing level. You know, you could see these students' works in a design showcase, you know, in those sort of high-end design furniture shops. As the curator for the Shape 2018 exhibition, what sort of things are you looking for? Not just as a marker, but as an objective.
But as a curator at the museum.
Yeah.
Look, there's a balance that we have in Shape. We go to meet NESA, the New South Wales Standards Education Authority. It's a very long name, but we'll look at PDFs. So we don't actually look at the works. We're looking at photos of the students' works, and I mean, I'm very quick to identify things that I think will resonate with museum audiences, and NESA's very quick to make decisions about what is they consider as exceptional work. And there's a big focus upon, you know, a realisation of a project from its concept to its realisation, so that they kind of, those two ends of the project match, and they go, he set out to do that, and yeah, he achieved it. And there's a level of also, like, that's really well made, that's incredibly, you know, beautifully machined, but then I'll find some of the work kind of, to me, I won't think of it, I won't see it in...
the design doesn't have appeal.
Design doesn't have appeal. That's a nice way to put it, Alex. And there will be some student work which has sort of some other vision, and it may not be finished to, you know, a standard or a level that it might...
that Jochen might do.
Yeah, that Jochen might do. I can't get line. But the work itself presents itself in as a concept, which is really quite beautiful. You know, furniture's not something we just make and we sit on. It's also like, you know, when you're not in the chair, you're looking at it, and it's, you know, they are furniture. I always think of furniture as sculptural forms within spaces. And looking at, you know, Jochen's studio, we can see a picture of Mies van der Rohe and others that they didn't just think of, you know, that furniture became an object in itself that was to be admired, not just functional. And that is, I suppose, you know, now that we're looking at it, that there's, you know, Jochen's got to this point where it's the concepts all whole and right there, as well as this level of finish. It's, you know, it's truly kind of remarkable marriage of all those things. And it's interesting that Jochen, you know, he took us through those drawings, and we saw, you know, he almost eliminated any element that was going to be easy to make in his drawings. You know, like, oh no, you can't have any flat surfaces. I want another curve, another more compound curve, and this is going to be
a hexagonal tenon.
Yeah,
you know?
the hexalone. And but again, those are the things that you know, it doesn't look complex. You know, when you see the Spark stool, it's just this very simple, elegant, fluid form. And yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Are there any questions out there from our students?
Yeah.
Can we cross now over to our students in their
I saw some.
classrooms? I'd love to hear some questions from you guys.
Have you finished your lunch? Hey, they were eating.
We've seen popcorn.
Yeah, I saw chips.
Hamburgers.
Any questions for Jochen, for Campbell, for Alex about you know, maybe advice for your work, how to get marks?
How are you going on your projects?
Yeah.
Is it thumbs up? Is it like, I don't know, where am I at? Yeah,
I got a thumb up.
We got a thumb up.
Nice.
Yeah. What about you guys? Yeah, got another. Yeah, no, they're just staring at us. No questions.
I have a lot of questions, but I'd love to open it up to any, even teachers, if you want to get involved, please. Throw out any questions for us. That'd be great.
Yeah. If there's no questions, then we feel like we've done our job. That's it. Like, we've answered everything. You know? And that's a job well done here then, isn't it? All right.
So I guess the question that I have is for Jochen, is that, and maybe relates to some of the students, you know, at the moment your goal is to just complete the HSC. You know, you're trying to get to that stage, but what after that? You know, what then? And my question is for Jochen, as a professional furniture maker and a designer, how do you get your work out there into the public eye, into shop fronts, into people's houses?
That is a very good question. I have started with when I first started out, I used a local craft organization. It's called Craft ACT, and they run fairly regular events where they exhibit locally made, you know, handmade craft of all varieties. I did start out with them, and then I guess sort of often one thing just leads to the next. In my case, somebody saw my work who wanted to collaborate with me to make furniture with that combined concrete and timber. So I started working with him, and then he had a lot of clients who were then asking, oh, who was doing this woodwork, and I got customers through that. And now my furniture's in a shop in Canberra, and I guess this is how Campbell ended up seeing it. So I guess you just got to find your first little thread where you can start unraveling the whole thing, and just find a place somewhere where you can exhibit. And there's always opportunities. There are craft organizations everywhere where you can become a member and become part of exhibitions there. And also, of course, if you have any existing relationships or ones that you only have to build with people who are already in that business and have an existing pool of customers who might be interested in something. For me, that collaboration with the person who's making the concrete parts was actually very important. It opened a lot of opportunities up for me. So I can only recommend, not to just sit in your own little workshop and work away at stuff. Try to get in contact with other people who already do this sort of thing, and they might have work that you can get, or they can expose you to opportunities.
So you're networking, but it seems like, again, it's quite an unconventional approach to taking woodwork out into the world. You don't necessarily just have a workshop that's open. You have a good presence online, Instagram, and your website. So for students out there, too. Where can people find your work if they want to explore it some more?
Yeah, sure. I guess for me, the best place to see what I'm doing is on Instagram. It's probably my main platform. I post quite regularly there. I obviously have a website. It does not get updated as frequently as my Instagram. So for a bit more background information, a website's great. But for more up-to-date stuff, I guess Instagram is really good.
And I assume that's how designers and makers are getting their work out there today. Alex, as a marker, is that something that students could be incorporating into their major works? Is exploring those avenues and demonstrating that that's their plan, is to get their work out there online and things like that?
In design and technology, definitely, for the marketing and those aspects of the major project, depending on what they want to do with it post-school. In industrial technology, possibly not so much, because it's not so focused on the marketing aspect. It's more focused on the design, conception and production aspect. However, if part of their statement of intent was that they wanted to pursue furniture building as a post-school career, then they could definitely write that into their statement of intent and have that as an aspect of their major project. There would be nothing wrong with that.
All right.
Well, we're just about done. Any last comments, guys, for students or for Jochen?
Thanks for joining us. I think that was great. Thank you, Jochen, especially in Canberra, and for answering our questions and telling us about your work.
Thanks very much to all the schools.
Thanks for your interest, guys.
Thank you very much, Jochen. We'll see you next
see you
week.
Again. Yes, I'm sorry. I'll see you again.
We'll see you next week for Shape 2018. And thanks to all the schools that did dial in. We can see you out there, so very, very big thanks. And I hope you guys got something from that, and good luck in your major works projects. Any last words, Alex?
I think one of the things for those of us in schools doing our major project is that Jochem's incorporating advanced manufacturing techniques, and we didn't even talk anything about his CAD designs or the fact we can 3D print his designs as a prototype, but he's also using traditional techniques as well where appropriate. And when making a major project, that's something you really need to bear in mind is, if I've got a CNC machine in my school, where is it appropriate to use it? So like the 1/2 degree taper on the tenon, for example, that's a really good spot to use that. But to build a whole project, probably not appropriate, and you'd need to think about table saws, band saws, planes and those sorts of things. I think it gives you a good balance of how to use modern machinery with more traditional cabinet furniture making techniques.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks
Right
very
on.
much. All right, that's us signing out. Thanks very much for joining us, and yeah, please stay in contact. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cool.